Hey everyone, welcome back to the DADennial podcast, the show that helps overwhelmed, overworked, and often overlooked dads build healthier minds, stronger families, and a life they actually want to wake up to. I'm your host, Mike Trank. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor and dad of two boys, and the voice behind the DADennial movement. Not the best voice today, but hey, it's fall, so we'll do what we got. But today we're diving into a conversation that every dad needs to hear, because we're talking about growth, healing, and gratitude in a way that's real, grounded, and actually doable. I'm joined by someone whose work I deeply respect, Dr. Dan Sneider, the mind behind growth and gratitude therapy. Dr. Sneider has become known for helping men and fathers break out of survival mode, reconnect with themselves, and build lives that feel purposeful instead of just reactive. Hopefully in this episode, we'll talk about what happens when gratitude becomes more than a checklist, how dads can shift out of shame and emotional shutdown, and why growth sometimes requires us to slow down instead of push harder. So if you're a dad feeling burnt out or stuck in a loop of stress, frustration, guilt, this conversation is for you. Dr. Sneider, how are you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm doing really well, Mike, and I'm so glad to be here joining you. Just before you hit record, I was, telling you that I've got two kids. I have two boys also, and yeah, today was off to a good start. No arguments this morning. Getting them ready, getting breakfast in their bodies, getting them off to school. So that's for me the best setup to the day.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to share, but how old are your boys?
Yeah, they're 8 and 5, so second grade and kindergarten.
Okay, so we're in the same boat. I got 8 and 6, third and first, but I don't know what it is, and maybe your therapy mind can understand it better than mine, but no one else can relate unless you have two boys that are like that close in age. That when you just said of the arguing, of like, I don't know what it is, just two boys. You can, like, 5 minutes in the room, if you either hear silence, that's scary, or if you hear screaming, that's the other side of it too. But who's on top of who is definitely a boy thing, I think, and more so anything. Like if any from one of my friends, I don't know about you, if has like a boy and a girl, two girls or anything like that, they don't know what I'm talking about. It seems like another world.
Oh, absolutely. No, there's differences, just like differences between mom and dad. There's differences between brothers and sisters, and two sisters, two brothers. It is very different, and certainly in my house, like if they're usually right when they're well fed, like they just finished eating, I've got about 10 minutes of them playing really nicely together, and then the rest of the time I'm either the referee or I'm playing one-on-one with usually my younger kiddo, and my older one can occupy himself a little bit, but yeah, I'm working hard there to keep them occupied and not on top of each other. Yeah, poking and hitting. You bet.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is one quote I heard one time that makes the most sense. Like when you have one kid, it's zone defense, but when you have two, especially two boys, it is man-to-man press coverage that you have to take care of morning, noon, and night. But anyway, I digress. So Dan Sneider, who is Dan Sneider, and tell me about your work. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's start off there.
Absolutely. So yeah, since we're focusing here on parenting and on the dad element, I'll start in my own childhood, because from an early age I knew that I wanted to be a dad. Other millennials out there remember the movie Hook, and I remember that was one movie in my childhood where I was like, wow, I don't want to be answering my cell phone. I don't want to be in Neverland, remembering how to be a kid. I want to be a dad that's engaged, that's at activities. And part of that was because, my dad growing up was somebody that I looked up to in many ways, but was also afraid of in other ways. And I knew I wanted to parent differently. In my household, there was a lot of emotional abuse that happened. There was a lot of big conflicts that turned into yelling, name calling, sometimes things being thrown. And I wasn't, protected from those things, as well as I knew I wanted to be protective of my kids as a dad. And, fast forwarding later, we can talk about the in between, but fast forwarding to later, now as a therapist, primarily working with couples and often being referred and looked to because, I am a man and a male therapist. This is still a minority. A lot of couples out there, want help for the dad part of the story. And so many dads out there, millennial dads like us, had stories from their childhood and they want to be different as parents. And it's really hard. They find themselves feeling stressed, worried about money, raising their voice sometimes, and not always able to be the gentle, kind, patient caregiver that we aspire to. So that's a little bit about where I came from, where I am now, and of course, a whole lot in between.
Don't you find, or do you find that term breaking the cycle is kind of like a key? I feel like I hear almost as a mantra of therapists and dads and dads in sessions of like, they don't, what you were just saying, if I don't want to be like that, I want to be something different, I want to be more emotional, more connected. Do you find that as well, like that term breaking the cycle really kind of rings true for you?
I do. It is a phrase that we hear often, and easier said than done. So I really try to validate for myself and for anybody who's sitting across from me that that ideal, that goal is wonderful, and we're still human beings, right? I absolutely get frustrated and lose my cool sometimes. I'm a therapist. I'm thinking about this all day. It's been my goal since I was a kid, like I just shared. But it's still hard to do in the moment, and we're not perfect. So a lot of what I try to bring to that conversation about breaking the cycle is it's not about perfect. It's not about every single time having the kind, gentle answer. You will make mistakes. There are times where I'm harsh. And what I really, really more than anything want to do is to repair, any rifts that happen. So my kids will sometimes say to me like, Dad, you're being kind of harsh. And, my instinct is to like defend myself, well, yeah, you just hit your brother and I'm trying to get dinner on the table. But in reality, like I was kind of harsh in that moment, and it wasn't a life or death situation. I was frustrated. And so I try to really focus on repairing that rift, apologizing, having a conversation. And for me, that's breaking the cycle. It's not never making a mistake.
Right. I think that's an important thing to know of, right? It's not, and maybe I could think of for myself of that was a common thing in my childhood growing up of, not that parents would make mistakes, but you would never apologize for it. Right? It was never like that learning experience. And now as therapists of, and as adults of understanding of that's the real learning tool actually is, hey, we're humans too. We make mistakes, we screw up and do things that we know that we shouldn't, but it's more of teaching you of how to apologize, how to own up to that, how to get better. I always phrase it as like what you're describing is creating your own template, right? That's the main thing of, I feel like that shift from that prior generation to this generation is there is no guidebook. There is no template of like, this is how to be a dad. Like this is the reshaping of the 21st century of not just social media and, interactive being online with being a parent and parenting your children. It's connecting emotionally. It's learning, understanding of making mistakes and owning up of what you did right, what you did wrong, helping them through things. And that's what I feel like is that biggest challenge, right, for dads and for just this new age of how do we, there's no guidebook, so we're trying to create it on our own here, which is hit and miss at times, obviously.
That's right. And since you brought up like the template of sharing our emotions, understanding our emotions, huge part of parenting and relationships in general. And so when I'm working with couples, a lot of what I'm helping both people to do, but particularly the man in the relationship or the dad, is just being able to understand what you're feeling and having a bigger template, a bigger wheel of feelings to choose from. And so my favorite tool that really helped me in my life, and now I love to share, is just that. Any of your listeners can Google a feelings wheel, a wheel of emotions. And what I'll share with dads in particular is you can be more than, sad, mad, angry, frustrated, happy. There's more than 50 different feelings that you could have, but I certainly didn't learn that many feelings growing up in my household. The ones I mainly learned were, mad, sad, frustrated, happy some of the time. But yeah, as an adult, and especially in a relationship, being able to understand my feelings, to share them with my partner, and then to model that for my children, for my kids, is a huge part of parenting and teaching our kids how to be in the world more than just those 4 or 5 simple feelings. I want for them to be able to tell me that, they're confused by something rather than frustrated, or they're feeling really hopeful today instead of fine or okay, right? I hear I'm fine a lot, and sometimes I say that too, but there's a huge range of feelings to draw from. And that's one of the tools that I include on my website, which any of your listeners are welcome to take a look at intimacyshift.com. I have a free giveaway for any of your listeners, and part of that giveaway is this feelings wheel tool that I'm describing and how to use it.
Definitely, we'll put that on our website there for people to connect to. So I was curious, maybe we can then get into growth and gratitude therapy. How'd you develop that, or what helped you create that?
Yeah. So if anybody listening is not already familiar with Brené Brown, I highly recommend they Google her, check out one of her books, one of her talks. She's a favorite of mine. And one of the exercises that she teaches and talks about in some of her books is a values exercise where, again, so many values out there. You can Google a list and find 100 different value statements. All of them are wonderful, but the idea for her exercise is that we try to find our core personal values and narrow that list down from 100 values that are all good, but which one are yours? And I got so much from this exercise, and at the end of whittling down the list more and more and more, came to growth and gratitude as my personal values. And growth being such an important thing for me. Again, coming back to we are not perfect. It's more about repair than it is about getting it right the first time. That's a message that I need to hear just about every single day, sometimes more than once, as a recovering perfectionist and someone that really does want to do their best and often comes up short because I'm a human being. So growth throughout my life has been a really big thing for me of okay, I didn't get it right today, but what's my power to practice a skill, to reflect on this, to do better tomorrow? And that's something that I want for everybody that I work with, first and foremost, to have that growth mindset. We can do better with different tools, with practice. So that's the first half, right? And then the gratitude piece as well. Like I mentioned, growing up in a household where there was emotional abuse, and I did feel scared a lot of the time. It was unpredictable as a household. I do have a tendency to go into depression. That's part of my mental health history, is looking at things with, cynicism, responding with anger when things don't go my way, and really withdrawing, isolating. Like so many of the dads that I work with, women too in a different way, but often with men, depression can look like withdrawing, avoiding situations, and sometimes lashing out with anger. And so for me and for so many others, gratitude is this incredibly powerful tool and practice that helps me out of those feelings and those moments where at any given time I can take a deep breath, I can think about the blessings I have, the things in my life that are going well. And there is always something that's going well. And we sometimes have to look harder for it. But the more we can hone in on the things that we're grateful for, the more we notice other areas in our day, in our lives, in our relationships to be grateful for. And it's a snowball effect. So the more that I focus on gratitude, the more grateful I feel for the things around me. And that's a message that I want to be put out there. And so growth and gratitude therapy is, part me and then part what I'm trying to bring into the world.
I feel like when you talk about the childhoods you had, I hear of when I was talking about templates of like that template of the way it used to be of when you would hear on shows or just wherever you were of like, wait till your dad gets home, right? And that was kind of like the template of like dad was a scary figure in homes of, myself too. If that's what I would hear, like, wait till your dad gets home, boy, and like conjures up that instant fear of and that was the template, that was the guy, and that's important to recognize that and to know that was cultural too. That was just kind of like what you saw, what you heard, like shows and commercials. It was always like till dad gets home and sees this or this happens, and we know now that that's not healthy, not a good kind of narrative for a father to be. I wanted to ask too of the magic ratio of 5-1. What can you tell me more about that and growth and gratitude?
Yeah, I love the magic ratio. Something, this is a theme, right? I didn't know about it growing up. I didn't see it modeled in my parents' relationship. And it comes from the work of John and Julie Gottman. So another resource for any of your listeners. They are couples counseling expert extraordinaires, and they have a ton of books, articles, videos to check out. And one of the things that they have found from their research is that whether you're parenting your kids or you're in relationship with your partner, your spouse, if you want them to listen to any kind of feedback, constructive criticism, we could call it, if you have anything to say that can be perceived as negative or something needs to shift, you better counterbalance that one thing with at least 5 positive things, 5 ways to call them in for things they did right, things you're excited about with them, things you saw them trying hard at. It's at least 5-1. The more, the better. But in any given interaction, day, week, or month, if some of your critical statements or your things that need to change are evened out, just 1-1 or even 2-1, 3-1, the person's only going to take in that negative or that critical comment and feel like they're not doing good enough, they're not liked, they're not being validated. And so it's a lot, and like you mentioned, right, with, dad's coming home, maybe tired from work or stressed. I certainly didn't hear my dad giving a lot of praise to the people around him, or to my mom especially. And so when I'm working with couples, that's a key skill and practice habit that I want couples to be in, is catch the other person doing right way more often than noticing what they missed, forgot about, or didn't do the way that you wanted them to. It's the best way to get them to actually do the thing you want. So it has results, right? I also try to be results oriented. This isn't just like, well, let's just be kind to each other. No, if you want your kids and your partner to be excited when you get home, to want to spend time with you, if you want your wife to have desire and passion for intimacy with you, then you need at least 5 really positive, complimentary things that you notice for every one that you find fault with, at least.
Very good information. I'm glad I asked about that. I feel like many dads struggle with that feeling of, quote unquote, being stuck. Do you feel like gratitude practices can help shift that?
I do. I feel that, and I've experienced it in my own life and seen it in others. So, I want to make sure that this is, research backed. This isn't just my opinion, right? Like, this is data that we have seen by interviewing, observing, other people in the world. And so, yeah, feeling stuck is a terrible feeling. And like I said, dealing with depression, I am very familiar with that feeling. And as a lifelong athlete, I know that I'm not going to get better at my activity by thinking about wishing that I was better at it. I have to go to the gym. I have to lace up my shoes, right? You got to put in the practice. And so feeling stuck, I can again relate to, and I want to motivate. Well, we've got to do something to get unstuck. And the longer we stay stuck, the harder it can be to get out of that rut. So I'm, gentle, but also firm, and like, let's do something, even if it's a small step. That's okay. I'll take any steps forward. But to get unstuck, especially if we're thinking about gratitude, that's a daily practice where we can, set an alarm on your phone once a day, take a deep breath, and call out one thing you're feeling grateful for in that moment. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be the last snack you ate. It could be the clothes on your back. It could be, your kids smiling at you when they are drawing something or showed you a Lego creation that they just made. These gratitude moments are everywhere if we look for them. If we don't pause to look for them, we're going to miss them and we can stay stuck. So yeah, absolutely. That stuck feeling is very real, and we can work through it.
Yeah, being stuck is, I feel like, a common one that I hear a lot as well, and trying to understand, explain what that looks like, what that feels like, and right, what you were describing of, small steps, right? Small manageable goals, and learning how to kind of break through that. Definitely seems to be it. Can you tell me more about the intimacy shift? I think that's one of the big things that you're working on specifically.
Yeah, so the intimacy shift is a 12-week program that's open right now. If any of your listeners want to learn more about it, again, just go to that website, intimacyshift.com. You'll drop your email and you will hear from me right away. And the naming behind it is something I know that everybody listening can relate to, because in the course of a relationship, there are shifts that happen in our intimacy. So in our emotional intimacy, where we feel like best friends, we trust each other, and in our physical intimacy, where we feel passion, we feel desire, what our sex life looks like. Major shifts that happen in a relationship are, when we move in together, when we have our first kid, when we have more than our first kid, when one of us enters, menopause, or our testosterone shifts, right? So there are various things that can happen that shift that intimacy over time. And in this 12-week program, what I want so much to do is to help people, number one, just feel like, okay, this is normal. We're not the only couple, or I'm not the only person who's going through this change, because you're certainly not. Men talking about their feelings, being vulnerable is a hard thing. I'll be the first to raise my hand and say it's hard for me to be vulnerable, even as someone that is in this work. And so if you are having a change in your personality where you're not feeling the same level of sexual desire for your partner, you're not sure if it's a hormonal thing or a getting older thing or a stressed thing, we need to be able to talk about it, because there are ways to change that. And so in the intimacy shift, I want to create a place where we can normalize all of these different changes that happen. And like I said before, I'm results oriented. I want action, and so I'm also teaching skills that help individuals and couples to address that shift and to either rebuild emotional intimacy and trust, or to rebuild their sex life, their physical intimacy. And usually it's both together at the same time. It's not an either or, it's that we're working on both things through really specific skills and practices.
Is it a 12-week program? Is this in person or online or both?
Yeah, great question. So it's all online. So I know we both live in North Carolina. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, actually here in North Carolina and in Florida, Colorado, and Illinois, because I've moved a few times. So I do have online sessions available for individuals and couples in any of those 4 states. This specific 12-week program, it's not therapy. It's very much an educational program teaching these skills and practices. And so it's available to anybody in the country, in the world. I wanted to really open access to it and make it different than therapy. As much as I love therapy, and that's what I do most of each day, I do get a lot of feedback from people who have had negative experiences in therapy, who have spent years, rehashing arguments, feeling like, well, we went to therapy, but it made things worse. We just argued, we just brought up all of these hurtful things that happened in our relationship. And that's certainly not the kind of therapy space that I want to create for my clients at all. But I can really understand that for some people, that therapy space hasn't helped them in the past, and they're looking for something a little bit different. And so in this program, my goal is really to educate and to teach, motivated people that want to know what are the skills and practices that I can use today and see a difference. And that's what this program is really geared for.
Is this program something that you kind of took all your knowledge and created yourself, or did you have collaborators, or how did you come about with this idea and this thought in 12 weeks?
Yeah. Well, so part of it, so I created it myself using, I've mentioned already John and Julie Gottman's work, so some of their work is in there. I'm also trained in emotionally focused therapy, which is a highly researched, highly regarded form of couples counseling. So there's a lot from there that's included. And so I put it together using different parts of trainings and research that I've learned over the years, and then my more than 10 years of experience working with couples and seeing what's worked, actually, in sessions with them. And because I'm a person, right? Like things that I know like helped me in my relationship, or things that I wish I knew in my relationships. Because I have, like many of us, loved and lost and gone through ups and downs in my own relationships. And, part of my, personal story is that I was married. Well, so first I was living with my partner. We got pregnant. We got married. We had our first kiddo. And all of that happened pretty quickly. And so it happened quickly. And because of that, a lot of the things that I'm saying now that I practice and that I use, I didn't have available to me at the time. And so there were a lot of ups and downs in that relationship. And we had our second kiddo a few years later, and then ultimately separated and divorced. And now I'm in a new relationship that I'm very excited about and is very healthy. And I've been using so many of the things that I've learned along the way to build that new relationship up. And so this program is really for people in any phase of that relationship journey, but it blends all the research-backed, trainings that I've done as a professional, as well as my personal journey, learning things along the way and knowing what I, as a man, as a dad, as a partner, wish I had known and want to make sure that other people learn.
Yeah, that's great information. What do you feel like makes your clinical approach to this kind of unique or different compared to what you were talking about, traditional therapy that not sometimes, but I feel like myself, like you were saying, if people can have negative feedback about therapy, traditional therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some of this I've seen change a little bit over the years that I've been a professional, that there's more of a focus now on therapists being direct, being more vocal in sessions, particularly in couples counseling. And so that kind of outdated or older model of a therapist who is, mostly silent, mostly listening, mostly validating, that doesn't work very well in couples counseling, because you will end up sitting and watching the couple argue in front of you, which is not helpful, right? They already did that at home. So a big part of what I've learned in trainings and also in my personal experience is that, as a therapist trying to help families, help couples, help parents, is to, interrupt harmful cycles. If there is the start of an argument, a big clue for me is when I start hearing you statements. You did that. You never do that. When you said that. Whenever I start to hear you statements like that, I'm going to pause and interrupt that session and help that person to use an I statement instead, or to take a deep breath and slow down, because you statements are a sign we're getting frustrated, agitated, angry. And so that's something that I very much bring to the table. And many of my clients have said, like, wow, like our last therapist didn't do that. Like, thank you so much, Dr. Dan. Like, we would have just continued with that argument. Like, thank you for pausing us. Because again, the goal is to, be able to hear the other person and for them to hear you. So that's a thing that I very much bring to sessions, is wanting to make sure we're doing it differently than you did at home, and that each person leaves feeling a little bit better understood and a little more heard.
Yeah, when I hear that of what you were talking about, I go to straight of the all or nothing statements, right? You always do this or you never do this. And that signals of like your difficulty of just trying to pick apart of like, well, it's never just always or never, it's always somewhere in between. And that can always be a big struggle. I'm sure you've seen that and try to work with that in the program, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I keep bringing myself into it. I have been guilty of these things in the past, and
Sure.
we want to grow. We want to learn, how we got to where we are, do it differently the next time, avoid getting there. And particularly for men, we want to have things be smooth and calm. And so often we'll push our feelings down, push our feelings away, not be sure how to talk about our feelings, be worried that if we bring something up, it's going to cause an argument. So we don't say it. And so a lot of times I'll end up in sessions with individuals or with couples who waited a really long time to get some help and get some support. So there's, years worth of examples of times where the other person let them down or they felt unseen or unheard. And that is really hard to break free from if it's been years of hurt feelings. So I really do want people as much as possible to like one situation at a time, not, every time, we visit this family member, something bad happens. It's, well, last week when this one thing happened, I felt this way. And if we can take that narrow slice, that one situation, it's going to be less charged. Both people will be less defensive, and we can work through that situation. And that's a small step. Like I said before, any step forward is meaningful, and we can stack a lot of those steps together.
Oh, that's great. That's great information. What do you feel like? What's a powerful but overlooked tool for staying grounded, during parenting stress? Couples, I feel like I'm thinking of it as being a parent of two, and that there's harder to find that time together, harder to connect at times, and making that effort. That's why I was curious of, what do you feel about overlooked tool or something to stay grounded during parenting and being, in a relationship?
Yeah. So I really like simple tools that are easy to access. We've got more complicated things that we can use and talk through, but something that we can take with us everywhere we go is our breath. And so my kids will tell you, like, I am a loud either sigher or deep breather. Sometimes I take a deep breath and they think I'm sighing and I'm frustrated, but they heard me and they usually stop what they're doing. They say, "Whoa, Dad, are you okay?" And often it's like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I just needed to take a deep breath." And, maybe I needed to calm down because I was thinking about something that happened at work. Or maybe sometimes I am taking a loud deep breath because the two of you were, arguing over a Lego, right? You can tell, like, this has happened to me more than once. And I didn't know what to do about it. And I wished that it would stop or that they could get along. And me raising my voice or telling them to share the toys or, what are you guys doing? They're not going to respond to that in the same way as if they hear me taking a loud, deep breath. And so I'm really big on taking mindful pauses for deep breathing because you can bring it with you everywhere you go, and it just takes a few seconds. And physiologically, right, like the research behind that is that when we take a long, slow inhale and a long, slow exhale, our heartbeat actually slows down, right? Our blood vessels expand. We can get more blood to different areas of our body, including our brain. So I love saying to people and reminding myself that when I take a deep breath, I can literally think more clearly because I'm allowing more brain and oxygen to flow to my brain. So that's a tool that I know is spoken about a lot more and more these days, less overlooked than before. But it's an automatic thing we skip because when we're frustrated, stressed, tired, we stop taking these deep breaths. And so I just want to bring it up all the time and remind people that if they are feeling tense or tight, they're probably not breathing properly. So let's pause for a moment and let's really overdo that long, slow, deep breath.
No, you're absolutely right. I do the same thing, actually, of not just for myself, knowing of I'm able to be more calm and figure out a solution to this problem with my kids. But also the example you set of, I didn't even realize, I always go back for myself of when I would do it, not realizing at the time my oldest was, I think, 3 or 4, that when he was mad, then he would start going to his room and taking deep breaths and just kind of and I would ask him, what are you doing? Are you okay? And he's like, I'm breathing just like you did. Oh, okay. Just knowing that, example of it's not just about me, it's about teaching them too. And that, going back to that, we initially talked about the template, right? I was like, oh, this is part of the template, it's part of the guide of I'm teaching them not to be afraid of me, but also they're absorbing what I'm doing in front of them, right? So if I lashed out in front of them at this example, then that's what they would know to do next time. The Lego or train set or whatever the case is, but that always sticks in my mind to this day. So every time to try to take that moment of I'm setting the example, because I know he definitely pays attention and will copy what I do. So if it's a negative thing, he's gonna copy negative behavior. And well, where'd you get it from? Well, I learned it from Dad. Okay. What do you feel real, meaningful transformation could look like for dads with your work?
So such a personal question, right? A little bit different for each one of us out there, but transformation for me is really looking honestly at ourselves, being able to truly take an assessment of, what am I doing well? Where do I need improvement? And what, absolutely has to change because it's, causing hurt or harm to the people around me. And so, it's not about comparing ourselves to the dad we see at the playground, right? It's a common human thing. And, that's one interaction. You might see another parent who in one moment is doing something really great, but we don't know their whole story. So really what we can do the best for ourselves is to know ourselves, where we're at, and what we need to get to where we want to be. And feeling sorry for ourselves or blaming other people just keeps us stuck. So personal transformation is very much about doing that honest reflection, not beating up on yourselves, but really honestly looking, and then taking action steps to make it different, right? How can we improve? And again, like theme for me, small steps leads to bigger leaps later. So a transformation is not done overnight. No way. It's not sustainable if we try to do it that way. So it has to be one step at a time, and being committed to that process. You know, as a dad, right, we have thankfully like years to work with. You know, on any given day, like I said, I'm not perfect. I might have an interaction with my kids that, you know, I'm not happy with. And I can beat myself up a little bit at night after they go to sleep. Like, I wish that I had done that better or differently. But the transformation part for me is, instead of going into the next day, blaming myself, withdrawing, feeling bad, it's repairing with my child. It's working to do it differently and using some of these tools that I've described, right? And really making that effort to pick one tool maybe for that day, just one. And if I can use that tool for that day, like, okay, that's a step towards that personal transformation. And that's sustainable long term. Your kids will feel it. Your partner will see it also. And that's really what my goal is for myself and for the people I work with.
That's great. I appreciate that. One last serious question, and then we'll get to rapid fire questions here at the end.
Okay.
How do you feel like dads can model gratitude for their kids in a way that feels authentic and not forced or, I guess, cheesy in a way?
Yeah. So it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because for years now, I have had, maybe not forced all the way, but I have had like a structure where Friday nights at dinner, we have a gratitude jar. You know, we say something we're grateful for during the week. We write it down. And I really love that. I love having a structure and have a plan. But lately it has felt more forced. And there are some weeks where my kids just aren't into it, or they roll their eyes at me, or they don't want to do it. And me like kind of forcing them to come up with something to be grateful for doesn't, like, it feels like we're missing the point. So that's something that I've been thinking of a lot lately, is like, how can I weave this in more of the time? And I'm a big fan of working smarter, not harder. So what I've been doing and has been working really well so far is that, you know, when I notice they're really joyful, they just had a big win, you know, they like yesterday we were at the playground and the kids were playing in the leaves. They were having a blast. And, you know, we got in the car, everybody was happy. And, you know, I asked them right in that moment, like, hey, like, what are you feeling grateful for right now? And it was an easy answer, right? Because they were already feeling grateful and joyful. I just pointed it out, had them put words to it. So I just paired those moments together. And I've been trying to do that whenever something positive happens in their lives. They're showing me something that they're proud of or excited about. Or if I'm feeling gratitude, I can just model it for them. And not every time, but a lot of the time when I genuinely share with them how grateful or excited I am about something, they'll say, yeah, I'm really grateful for that too. Or, you know, I'm grateful for this thing also, Dad. And, you know, it wasn't me like, tell me what you're grateful for, right? Like, I was feeling it, I said it, and some of the time they share it back with me.
What goes in a gratitude jar? I like that.
Yeah. So we've got this like big glass jar on the counter, and I'm not going to remember what I said last week, but we've had all sorts of things. I think sometimes we have 2 cats, so sometimes my older son is grateful for getting to cuddle with our cats. Sometimes I'm grateful for their teachers. If that week I really needed the kids to be in school and to be excited to go to school, I'm often grateful for their teachers. Sometimes I'll bring up, my partner, if my partner and I had a really special moment that week where she really showed up for me, I'll call out that relationship and my gratitude there. So it's all kinds of different things, but whatever is standing out that day or that week, we write it down and it goes in the jar. And we've been doing that for years. And the kids have been asking me what we're going to do when the jar gets filled up. And I don't have an answer for that yet. I didn't think that far ahead. So for me, the practice is really just seeing, how many things we're grateful for. But maybe we'll do some kind of project with all these slips of paper that we've been writing on over these years.
That's a great idea. I'll have to try that one myself. All right, now we're ready for the last couple minutes here. Just kind of do questions that we ask most guests here. First one, so first thought kind of comes to mind, as we know as therapists. What's one dad superpower you wish you had?
Oh, more patience.
Early morning quiet time or late night reflection? What's your go-to?
Oh, I try to get both when I can.
What is your cheat snack? If you could have morning, noon, or night, whether you make it or whether you buy it, what's your unhealthy snack that you just need to have every now and then?
Yeah, well, last night, chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream after the kids went to bed.
There you go. What's the most dad thing you've done this week?
The most dad thing I've done this week. This morning there was an awards assembly at school where my kids did not get student of the week honors, but they got attendance honors because they've been going to school most of the time, almost every day. So that was a dad moment for sure. And I mentioned the playground yesterday after school. So those are pretty big dad moments.
Good positive dad moments for sure. Last one, if you could give every dad in the world one sentence or one word of wisdom, what would it be? Or what could it be?
Mm-hmm. So one word of wisdom for all the dads out there, that every moment is an opportunity for connection, and if you miss this one, you have the next one. So every moment is an opportunity for connection. That's
great. You got some great thoughts that just come out. I'm instantly like that. I cannot think like that quickly. But Dr. Dan Sneider, thank you very much for your time. Check him out, The Intimacy Shift, the 12-week program. I appreciate you sharing about that, and that will be on our website, but also go check him out. What's the website for you and for the Intimacy Shift to sign up?
Yeah, so either intimacyshift.com or theintimacyshift.com. I grabbed both domains just in case, and that's the best place to get in touch with me because you'll drop your email. You'll get that free resource right away with actionable tools, and then you'll get an email from me and we can connect in different kinds of ways depending on what you need. But that's the best place to start.
That's great. We will post that as well. I'm grateful for this conversation. Thank you very much again, Dr. Dan Sneider, and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.